So I am back. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Munich.net meetup. I hope you can hear me all. I am George, and today we have a very interesting meetup about a very interesting event about Uno Platform. Most of you might already know it, but anyway, it is a cross-platform for creating apps for mobile, desktop, and web. And I'm sure we all have a few questions, or we are anyway interested to find out how they achieve this pixel perfect development that they are advertising. So just give me a few seconds and we'll start immediately. This is me, and this is, I'm only showing you this because of the next slide. Actually, I am recording everything and I plan to publish it to YouTube for everyone that wants to see it at a later date. So if you object, if you have any kind of problems, please find me here. Here is my Twitter, for example, or you can use the meetup.com platform. You can find me there, of course, and ask any questions you might have for this. Now, I don't have anything else. We can move forward. Jerome, the virtual stage is yours.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to be sharing my screen.
Yes, I will stop sharing.
And
I did. And I will also stop my camera just to save some bandwidth. And
of course.
About the questions, how would you like to do that? Will we have some time for questions at the end?
We can do both. I mean, if there's I'm going to be looking at the chat. So if there are questions in between or people that want to speak up, I'll regularly ask for comments if everything's clear or not. So I don't mind if it's kind of a free flow presentation. I have the structure of the slide, but still, if there are questions or if it's not clear, you don't hesitate to ask questions. I don't know if Slack has Zoom has a way to raise hands or something like that, or if it's just the
they do to be honest.
Maybe there's a reaction, but anyways, I'll look at the chat.
But yeah, I can also monitor the chat and let you know if there is something.
Excellent. Okay.
Super.
So there it is.
I sign off.
Shared the screen. And should I see something different? So yeah, the chat's not visible when I'm full screen like that, but that's fine. So if there's something,
but I can see if there is a message, so I can let you know.
Good. Excellent. So good evening, everyone. I'm assuming it's the evening for you. My name is Jerome Laban. I'm the CTO of the Uno Platform. It's the open source project that we've been working on for quite a while. I'm based off of Montreal. And I'm going to be introducing you to what Uno is and what it does, and what you can do with it, and everything that goes along. So if you have any question, please let me know. Interesting. Oh, that's that's new. Okay, so we have had that is an actual new presentation that I have. So the Uno platform is interesting. It's not very visible, so I'll probably just show you the slide that way, because that other slide is probably not very visible. Sorry about that one. I'm gonna hide those slides because they're not useful at this point. That's the problem of we have a team of designers that work, so they throw they work on quite a few things, and sometimes it stays there. So the Uno platform. So our mission is about making WinUI apps running natively on mobile, desktop, web, and pretty much anywhere WinUI doesn't run. So if you don't know about WinUI is the technology that Microsoft has been working on for quite a while, actually, even before it was named WinUI. It's all about XAML and C#. And for us, the idea is we take the code that you've been building and we're using your skills and make them run on any platform. So we've been there for a while. Even before we went to open source since 2013, and we've open sourced in 2018, and then we started adding lots of features with WebAssembly and other supports like Linux and C# and other types of features that I'm going to be talking to you about during this presentation. So it's fully open source and Apache too. So you can use it. You can use it and have fun with. We can have fun with it without any strings attached. So I'm going to be explaining you what that means by Uno Platform. So Uno Platform is about making your application in XAML and C# running on the web, running on Windows directly, and make that run without changes on browsers using WebAssembly, on macOS and iOS using Xamarin. Using Xamarin, so it's not Xamarin Form, it's Xamarin specifically. Then on Android and Linux, and when we're talking Linux, we're talking all range of Linuxes, like running on Raspberry Pis and other types of devices like that. So it can go from desktop down to smaller devices. And on Windows, Uno is not present at all. So we're not talking about anything that makes the UI or your application run on Windows. It's just what Microsoft has been building. And on the other platforms, Uno is basically trying to replicate the behavior of what WinUI is doing on the other platforms, so you don't have to do it. So if we go a bit more into details, what that means is that when your application is being built, when you're building it on UWP on Windows, then you have your layer of XAML and C# that's shared across platform, and then underneath, Uno is going to be adjusting the way the UI is shown onto the platform. So you can see, for instance, HTML and CSS that are showing up there for WebAssembly. So we're taking, let's say, your visual elements and outputting HTML and CSS that you don't see, but that are there. You get, when you're on iOS, we're using UIKit underneath, and for Android, we're using Android UI. And underneath, we had either Mono or .NET 5 now, and Xamarin Classic, depending on the target. So that's how we're working. And basically, how are we doing this? How does it work? So what we're doing is we took the whole API set of WinUI plus WinRT. So when we say WinRT, it's the UWP. So UWP is a term that's muddied a bit. It changes over time, but in UWP, there are two sets of APIs. There's the WinUI part and there's the WinRT part. So WinUI part is the one that talks about UI elements, so stack panels, grids, text blocks, pivots, bindings, theming, and other things like that. So that's the first part, and that's what that is what now is called WinUI, and is going to be evolving in WinUI 3 during the year, and it's actually moving faster now, and with updates that are going to be coming up in the next few months. And there's also the part that's non-UI, and that makes it quite interesting. And that API is very, very, very large. And the idea for a developer is to know about one API, which is the WinRT one. So let's say if you want to do geolocation, you're going to be having to learn just that one API that you know of. And if Uno has the implementation for that across platform, then you don't need to learn how to do geolocation per platform. So that's one of the key benefits of doing this. And the way we've done this is that we took the existing API set that Microsoft is providing as part of Windows, and we're generating the API surface automatically so that all the APIs are available to compile onto. It doesn't mean that we have implemented everything, of course. So most of that is stubbed, but we've implemented lots of those for the UI. So when we're saying there's a stack panel, so that stack panel is available and has the same API that you will see when running on Windows. Same for the other platforms. And that's where the beauty of being able to run on, being able to provide the source code for free on GitHub is that if you find an API that you want to use and you don't have access to, or that is not implemented properly, or not at all, that's something that you can definitely implement for yourself and provide a pull request so that we can take a look at integrating that for the rest of the Uno users. Now, the interesting side about providing the same API that Windows provides is that existing libraries that are already targeting WinUI can also target Uno. So that means that we were able to take Prism, RX, Windows Community Toolkit, Reactive UI, MVVM toolkits, MVVM Lite toolkits, and now the toolkit that's available as part of the Windows Community Toolkit and many other platforms. Because they do have support for WinUI, that means that they also have the ability to compile onto Uno. So that's something that we've been working on to improve the support for. But the idea is that if you have an application that's running on UWP at this point, it's likely that it's going to run as well on top of Uno on the platforms that Uno supports. So that's we had Syncfusion and Telerik that have been showing interest for that one. We have also Infragistics that have controls that are available for that. We'll talk about that afterwards. So now let's talk about how the platform mappings happen. So I said that we have stack panel, we have a few others. We implemented many of the UI controls so that when you create your UI, that UI is available to run on devices specifically or on browsers or others. But a text block naturally maps to something else. So when you write a text block on Uno, that text block is going to be translated over to UI label on iOS, to text view on Android, to an HTML paragraph, so the P element that you write in standard web page, and down to a canvas when talking about Skia. So there's two approaches in terms of rendering the UI. The first one is using the native controls. So those native controls are basically the ones that are available from the platform, and we're just augmenting them to make them look like and be pixel perfect on the on every platform if need be. But there's also the Skia implementation, which renders basically pixels, and that means that when you're targeting when you're running on Linux, that platform is using pixel rendering per se. So there's no UI label equivalent in Skia because there's no native controls there. So that's kind of the questions that people ask. That's a question that people ask about that most of the time too. Is it native or is it pixel rendered? It can be both depending on the platform. So on Linux for now we only have pixel rendering, but it may change in the future depending on what we're going to be implementing. Now, with regards to non-UI APIs, like settings, for instance. So when we're talking about settings, it's about you have an application that needs to store settings to, let's say, the current username that is being logged into your application, so that the user doesn't have to enter it again when coming up again to the application. Then you want to use that setting storage, and every platform has its own way of storing settings. And what we've done is basically re-implement the setting storage per platform so that only one API that comes from WinRT and UWP, and we're taking care of the rest. So it's NS user defaults on Apple platforms, share preferences on Android, and IndexedDB for WebAssembly and things like that. So that's the way we're handling things and platform differences. So you don't have to take care to know about those. So enough talking, or actually enough slides. Let's go take a look at what you can do and how you can create an application using Uno Platform. So this is Visual Studio for Windows, and we have support for other environments like Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio for Mac. And the way you get this, and we're to be able to start up this, you have to go to the extensions for Visual Studio. And when you search online, you can have, when you search for Uno, you get to the Uno Platform Solution Templates. When you install this, you get a set of multiple templates. So when you create a new project here, you get access to a template that's called a cross-platform app. So the same thing here. If you go to search for Uno, you get this one. So I have a bit more templates here because of a specific that we're working on. But the idea is that you have a cross-platform app for Prism, and you have also a few others like a cross-platform library. So if you want to create a you want to create reusable controls, that's something that you can use and use cross-platform library. So when you create your application, you end up with something that looks like this. So I hope it's not too small. I cannot zoom in because sometimes Zoom is doing funky things, but I'm zooming as much as I can for the center part. So what you can see here is that the application is created with many platforms. That's actually all the platforms that we support. And don't be overwhelmed by those. If you want to let's say have only WebAssembly and Skia, you can just drop all the other targets and it works. It will work properly. We only ask for you to keep the UWP ones because we are sharing content for that one. So we have Android, iOS, macOS, Skia for GTK, Tizen, and WPF, as well as WebAssembly. And the idea is that all those projects are pretty much empty. They only have very specific platform specific code. So for instance, if we go to UWP target, there's pretty much the app manifest and a few assets, and that's it. There's nothing else. The rest is going to be located into the shared project that you can see at the bottom here, which contains assets, strings, your images, and the XAML encode of your application. So if we take a look at let's say the page here, we can open that XAML page here. We can see that I have my application here, and let me zoom in on that one. Okay, so you can see it's a basic hello world with the proper content that should be displayed here. So the workflow basically is that you start with your UWP application, and you can use the tooling that Microsoft is providing as part of the default templates from Microsoft. So we didn't touch anything about the original template. So it's actually the default Windows template for UWP applications that we enable cross-platform by using shared projects here. And you can see about shared projects also that when you open the references for a project, you can see that the app 127, yes, I do make lots of find new projects if you're taking a look. So that project is referenced here, and you're going to be finding that same reference here. Like for instance, in here, you get the project references, and that shared project is referenced in all the other targets. So when I have my application running here, one of the good things that's been worked on by Microsoft recently, and that's one of the reasons we're still getting we want to keep the support for UWP and Visual Studio, is that the tooling is pretty good. And one of the important feature is hot reload. And what that means is that if your application is running, you can just change the XAML, and it will automatically update to that newer version of the XAML. And you can see that maybe it's a bit too small, but I didn't save the file, and it's automatically already picking up the changes that I added there. So don't mind the squigglies there. It's I'm using a preview version of Visual Studio. That's because we're working with Microsoft to get some of the issues fixed that are pertaining to Uno. So expect that many things will change in the future if you've seen things like this. But that's the idea. So when you change the XAML, it ends up being there. And if you've been doing some XAML and C# for a while, you may know that things like binding can be tricky to diagnose. So let's say I'm adding a stack panel, and I add a small slider with a name that I call slider. And you can see that my slider is available already at the top. So I can move that slider. And one thing that's always interesting there is that I can just take this, and instead of adding this, I can go and add a binding. So let's say I'm binding the value of my text block to the element, to the slider that's at the top. And I haven't even saved yet, and it's picking up the changes. So when I change this, you can see that the text block's text is now bound to the value of the slider above. So that means that you can change basically your UI pretty quickly. And let's say if the background here is not the right one, I can change it. I can change the margin and things like that. And then it's going to end up allowing you to manipulate your application and adjust the UI pretty quickly without having to rebuild everything every time, because even though building can be fast, it still takes some time. So you just adjust your UI that way. So now let's say I'm done with my application and I want to be able to run that on the other platforms. So now let's go for WebAssembly, for instance. So I set my target here as a as the start project, and now I'm going to be just deploying the application directly. So when we're talking about WebAssembly, and I'll be discussing that a bit afterwards during the presentation, the building of this is about creating a website. So it's automatically generated for you. You don't have anything specific to do. It's just press F5 and it will just automatically create the rest. But the idea is that we're downloading a few things like downloading the Mono, the .NET SDK, the .NET SDK, so that your application runs properly inside of the browser. And there we go. So that's my application running there. And you can see that it's the same application that I've been building using and that you've seen on Windows, but it's running inside of my browser. So that's the same application running there. I didn't change anything. I just changed the target from UWP to WebAssembly, and it gets to run directly in my browser. So just so you know, it really is a local application. So if I, let's say, go to a network and I refresh that page, you will see a few things. For instance, you will see that the Uno application is downloading a few things like PDBs and .clr files, which are actually DLL files, but we're naming those to avoid blockings by many of the firewalls. But once the application is loaded, then that's it. There's nothing else that happens. Everything's local, completely local. So there's no interaction or anything. So if you have your privacy concerns about what your application is doing, and for your clients, that's something that is completely local, and you can do lots of things that way without having to have a server-side counterparts that may provide access to your users' data without having them to provide consent. So that's something that's pretty interesting with regards to WebAssembly there. So if I go back to my application and I change, let's say, I think that black here is not the right one. So if I want to have some red counterpart, then that's it. I can change that, and it's now available on my device, on my browser with updated content. So that's the kind of things that we can do with the use of WebAssembly here, and it's the same thing for the other targets like Android, Mac OS, and others. So another part that I enjoyed is the fact that margins are always complicated to handle, and if I adjust that, then I got my margins updated. So you can pretty much change all of it. So another thing that we can do is use all the controls that are available inside of Uno. So for instance, there's a navigation view control that is a control that's is something that allows you to do specific navigation. So it's something that probably you've seen in Windows applications if you've been developing for UWP or for UWP mainly, and it's something that you can try out directly without having to understand what needs to be done underneath, and just replace your content in the application that way. So that's basically what we can do with an application using the Uno platform, and and deploying to other targets. So one of the other interesting parts about this is that we have also support for CGTK. So that one is quite interesting. So when we're talking about this is it gives you the ability to take your application and run it on Windows, of course, because Skia is able to run on Windows. So let's take a look at that one. If I run my application again by selecting the GTK head, you would see that my application is starting up, and I have the same exact content that I just pushed in my application. So you can see the same navigation view that I have here. And another interesting part is that if I go into my Visual Studio here and I, let's say, remove that because it's not what I wanted, and I set back my stack panel and slider, then it just updates immediately, and I have my application running the same way on both targets. So the reason we have this target for Skia on Windows is that it allows you to run WinUI applications on Windows 7. That's something that WinUI is not able to do at this point. You cannot run a UWP application down to Windows 7, and with Uno you can. So that's something that's available there. Another thing that is also available is the ability to run on Linux. So, and with the help of WSL, you can run that. So I don't think I have WSL enabled here in that version of Visual Studio, but there's the ability to run WSL to run that application in WSL. So if you have the Windows subsystem for Linux installed in your machine, you can develop and debug your application from Windows there, and have your application work properly without having to change anything. It will run in the Linux context directly. So that's for the base demo of what you can do with Uno Platform and the way we're starting this. And let me go back to the slide. So is there any question about this demo specifically?
I have a question about
Yes.
the WASM.
Yes.
Microsoft has it's kind of experimental project about bringing Blazor into the mobile.
Yes.
It's called Blazor mobile bindings or something
Right.
like that.
It is.
Which is not XAML. It is a different approach.
It's Razor. It's
Razor,
Razor
yeah,
Pages.
Yeah. Thanks for the help. I forgot that. Is there a possibility to embed such format in this project as well instead?
So yes, so that's something that we're on the lookout. So since it's a so we're using WebAssembly, and we've actually been doing some demos around that. The idea is that because it's the same runtime underneath, there's the ability to mix and match everything. So for now, the underlying .NET platform is still a bit. If your application is taking ownership of the page, there's no way to have a second application running at the same time. But it's not a technical limitation that's very deep. So it's something that needs to be enabled on the .NET side, but it's something that will be available at some point. Mix and matching technologies. So if at some point, let's say you want to develop some part that is run with Uno, and then you want to integrate that into an application that runs Blazor mobile bindings or Blazor completely, yeah, that's something that it will be that will be possible. So just so know that Blazor mobile bindings are only for iOS and Android, and that your integration with this will probably just be evolving in the future. But that's something that's definitely something that is going to be possible in the future for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's continue a little bit. So in terms of what the XAML support is, we're basically providing support for more and more features as we go. We have control templating, data templating, styling, theming, conditional XAML. The conditional XAML is important because it allows for the creation of XAML pages that can render differently depending on the target. So let's say if you have a specific text block that needs to be displayed on iOS specifically and not on the other platforms, you can do that. We have native control integration. So if you're on iOS and Android, you can just take, let's say, if you have an ad control that you want to add because you need to monetize your application, that's something that you can just drop inside of the XAML, and that will work properly. We have animation support with state triggers and Visual State Manager. So if you have let's say, an application that needs to be responsive, and that's pretty much what most applications that are cross-platform need, then you can use Visual State Triggers to do Visual State Triggers and Visual State Managers to do that. We have lots of samples around that. We also support data binding, property inheritance, and XBind functions. So that last one is something that we've been investing a lot lately, and especially if you're coming from WPF and had the problem of not being able to have multi-bindings working properly in your applications, that's something you can take a look at. It allows for calling functions from your XAML so that you can have any kind of code that's available from your code behind or any library that you can call directly from your XAML. So it basically removes the need for value converters. Those pieces of code that are not particularly user-friendly or developer-friendly. We support complex text blocks and shapes and brushes or many things like that. So that's the kind of XAML support that we have. And if you find anything that doesn't fit for your environment or that you don't know about, just drop us a question on either Stack Overflow, on Discord, or anything like that. So I'll share the details for that at the end. We also support localization in images. So the idea is that you only add an asset once. So let's say you have assets with the scale suffix. So for instance, you have the 100, 200, 400, and things like that. So those assets are automatically translated over to what the native platform support. So that means that you don't have to handle that explicitly. We support also localized assets with lang support. So if you have specifics for your language, that you can handle that properly. And you only need to localize strings once. So that's another thing. You basically translate your application on Windows using ResW files, and you need to bother with iOS plists files and Android strings and others. And this is going to be taken care of by Uno automatically. Same thing goes for the other platforms. So if you have a translation, goes over to Linux and the browser automatically, and it's automatically switching based off of the user's preferences. We also have support for Fluent UI, so all the good design guidelines and Fluent assets that we have. So we've basically created a, you probably know about Sigo UI. So Sigo UI and Sigo Model 2. Those are fonts that are coming from Microsoft that are not open source. You're not free to use them, in all cases. And because of that, we basically recreated a font that mimics the behavior of that one. So that you can use that in your application. So you can enable the Fluent UI system that Microsoft has been working on Windows and have that on your application running on Uno. Same thing goes for Material. We have an implementation of the Material design guidelines that are available across platforms. So you can use that on Windows directly, but also on the other targets, just by including a NuGet package and a few lines of code. It's going to enable you to have access to fab buttons and all the things that are available there. We have a sketch available that you can use for your designers so that they can implement that properly for your applications and make your application looking great. On that topic, we've implemented an application that is called the Uno Gallery, sorry, that is providing a way to show what we mean by having access to either Fluent or Material. So for instance, a button or Material is going to look like this. An application is going to be providing content like that. But if you go to Fluent, it's going to be the same thing. Your application is going to be behaving that way. So you can see if you're, I don't know if it shows really well on the stream, but corners around it. It's part of the new Fluent design. So that's something that is of interest if you're developing an application. So you can switch between the two, and we have lots of things like changing theming like that. So you can see here there's small things. So we're actually working on an update that's going to be out in the next few days that are going to be fixing most of those things that happen when changing the theme like that. So you'd say if you want to take a look, you can take a look at the cards, for instance, and take a look at the code that you can write to get that specific design and have that in your application. So that's for Material. Now, I mean, you can ask, I mean, you're new. I mean, it's been only 3 years that you've been sourced. It's actually not true. We've been working on applications for a very long time, and the reason we did that, we invested in Uno in the first place, is that we were building applications as part of Inventive, which is the parent company for Uno Platform. It's a service company, it's a service agency that does applications for customers, and all those applications, the applications that you can see here are public applications that have been built using Uno, and they're retail applications. I mean, it's not just new applications that we've been pushing out just for the sake of the demonstration. So it's been battle tested, and lots of customers of Inventive are using Uno in that context. Another thing that is of interest is the Uno Platform Playground, and I'm going to be showing you that right away. It's an application that is on the web, and it's if you go to playground.platform.uno, you can experience what we mean by using XAML directly in the browser. So you can basically check for all the snippets that we have for seeing what we can do with borders, or let's say what a canvas does, or if you want to test it by yourself, you can just do this and alter the content and have an idea of what that means for using. Let's say, for instance, if you want to have menus and things like that, you can just test that directly in the browser. We also have a data binding engine that allows you to test all this. So let's say if you go to, for instance, the checkbox, if I remember correctly, no, maybe not that one. That's combo box, for instance. The combo box, you can see that the data is data bound, and you can find that in the code behind there. And if you want to change, then the content is going to be updated right away in your application when you're selecting this. So that's the idea of the playground, and you can manipulate that, and you can even share snippets. So if you have issues, you can create your XAML here and share that with us. So it's easier to troubleshoot issues or just test out things inside of the browser.
May I ask?
Yes.
What is behind? Is this WebAssembly? Or
yes, this is WebAssembly. Oh, I forgot to mention.
Okay.
Yes, this is completely WebAssembly. This is an application that completely runs using Uno. So this is an Uno app running there. And let's say if you take a look at that, you can see that there's all those things that are running there. So those messages are coming from this. So this side. This is the Monaco editor. So this is Visual Studio Code's text editor that we've been embedded in the app, but the rest is completely XAML, and it's a Uno app that uses Uno to show itself. So it's one of the examples that we give for that. So the source code is available. You can go take a look if you want, and replicate that for your application. Yes, there's a question. Oh, or it's just the hand that was just up before. No, okay, that's the hand that was up before. Okay, so let's continue on that topic. So when we're talking about, that's a good segue about WebAssembly. One of the reasons for WebAssembly is that currently the web is mostly JavaScript or derivatives of JavaScript. But the thing is that this, things that are possible on devices and less possible on the web. And if you go, let's say if you take your mobile app and you open it in Safari, sometimes it's going to behave differently. So, but if you're having a mobile app, then deploying onto a mobile device can be complicated because of the stores. So you get performance, you get pros and cons depending on what you're trying to target. But the overarching thing that you have still the JavaScript stuff that needs to be there and that you need to learn. If you have an application that's been running using C#, let's say you do WPF, or you have a C# application running on mobile, then going to the web is a problem. And that's where WebAssembly comes in. And just to explain a little bit quickly about what WebAssembly is. WebAssembly is about making a low-level bytecode for the web. The binary format is .wasm. So it's if you see a site that's downloading a .wasm file, this is what it is, WebAssembly. I'm just showing here what that means to have WebAssembly into textual format. I mean, it's pretty much close to what an assembly language would do. So you don't need to go into too many details there. It's not something that you will write probably in the same way you wouldn't write any assembly code. But the base idea is that it's a compilation target for any language. Pretty much in the same way you would select for x86, x64 or ARM, then you can select WebAssembly as a compilation target. And new language every month that are coming up to WebAssembly, and I think the last one I thought of that was there, I think it's Fortran that happened to be running now in WebAssembly, but C#, C++, Java, Rust, very vibrant community there. Go, Python, and others are able to run on WebAssembly, and what that means is that you can take very old code or your existing code that has been battle tested and pour that over to the web and have it run there without having to change anything. So that one of the things that makes it so interesting for developers that have existing code base to go to the web. It's supported in all major browsers, and expanding with newer features coming up every now and then. You have nothing to install; it's already available in your browser. It's not like like the history that was a bit of a problem. I'll talk about that afterwards. There's a performance aspect that's very important with JavaScript and WebAssembly. JavaScript is a problem because it's a language that's made for humans, so it needs to be parsed. And if it's parsed, that means that there's probably dependencies that the compiler may not know of. So it needs to wait for things that need to be downloaded from the web, from the network, and that's not something that WebAssembly has a dependency on. So it's able to compile and store the result of the compilation, so that when you come back to the application after a while, it's compiled and it runs fast from the get-go. It's not something that is easy to do with JavaScript. And with recent versions of the WebAssembly compilation, streaming compilation, you basically have tiered compilation running. So the application executes faster the more you use it, or the longer you use it. So that's some things that needs to be taken care of, taken into account when using a WebAssembly application. With regards to security aspects, WebAssembly is able to run in the same security sandbox as JavaScript. So anything that JavaScript can do, WebAssembly can do, and the other way, not necessarily the other way around, because there are features in WebAssembly that JavaScript is not able to do. But it's as secure as JavaScript, and it doesn't repeat the errors of the native add-ins. So you don't need to install anything to get that running. So no Flash, no Java applets, no Silverlight that needs to be running there. It's in the browser, and you don't need to install anything else. And there are some interesting use cases there with the fact that you can run other types of applications, AutoCAD and Unity and Emacs, and if there's even a sample of Windows 2000 running inside of the browser. I'll post the link at the end, but that's a pretty interesting thing. Is you get the full virtual machine of Windows 2000 running inside of your browser. It's pretty mind-boggling if you ask me. So and it's continuing to move. We also have added lots of things around Skia Sharp. So Skia Sharp is the library that's used by Chrome to draw itself. So your Chrome uses this library to display its own content. And we have a sample app that I can show you actually that application running. So this is the library that's been built using native WebAssembly that is using Skia Sharp. So Skia Sharp is a C# binding, a .NET binding to the Skia library, so that you can use it inside the browser. So it's basically giving the ability for an application to run everything inside of the browser and have pixel manipulations like blurring and things like that. So that application is running using software rendering. But we've worked with the Microsoft team from Skia Sharp to be able to enable hardware accelerated rendering. So this we're going to be updating to add support for faster rendering there, and it's going to go blazingly fast. So that's the kind of thing that we can do with Skia Sharp. So if you have a library that uses that kind of rendering, you can take that and make it run on the web directly without touching anything. It will work properly. And I'm actually talking about that during my Twitch stream, so where I live code the Uno platform, and I've been taking a deeper look at Skia. So if you want to know more about this, join me on my streams. I'll post that on at the end. So that's the application for C#. We also have so XAML hot reload I talked about. I'm not going to expand on that one much more. We also have something that may be of interest. So if you've been developing applications using Xamarin Forms, we have a way for applications that have been running on iOS and Android to be ported over and add support for WebAssembly. So it's basically a .NET new command that you can run, and your application that uses Xamarin Forms, given that the features that you're using are supported on top of WebAssembly, are available. So your application is going to be running there. So it adds up to your list of targets that are already available for .NET 5. And we have actually Xamarin Forms 5.0 that's coming up. It's going to be available in the next few days. So that's something that adds another vertical to the support for WebAssembly. So, and one of the reasons we're able to do this is that Xamarin Forms already supports UWP, and because Uno supports all UWP, so that by extensions it can run on the web. We also have a UI testing framework. That's something that's very important for us. And we're UI testing and unit testing Uno at every PR. So every piece of code that runs in gets all the full suite of UI tests run every time, and it's available for you as well. So there's a way to UI test your applications across iOS, Android, and WebAssembly with other platforms coming. And so that's an example of a UI test that you can make. If you're familiar with Xamarin UI test, it's pretty close to the API that Xamarin UI test is providing. And it also works for WebAssembly using Selenium, but you don't need to use Selenium explicitly. It uses that underneath automatically. We also have support for infra-6 control. So you can go to the URL at the top here, for which you can go and take a look at all those controls that are running on WebAssembly and iOS and Android using Uno. So if you have any kind of interest, there's the nice people from infra-6 that are always on the lookout for your use case and feedback on their controls that have been developing in collaboration with us. As for the Uno platform future, we got always things around WinUI 3 updates and alignment. Microsoft has been very busy adding controls to WinUI, and we're always on the lookout to add new controls. So we've been porting lots of controls like a tree view, data grids and navigation view, hierarchical navigation view, and other controls like that. And we're adding more and more controls as we go. We're adding more platform integration with our contributors that are our amazing contributors that are adding newer features. Like let's say, for instance, we had someone add support for file open and file save pickers recently. So that's the kind of things that are ideally needed by people that want to make applications running on the web and other targets. And of course, improve performance. That's performance is always we're always on the lookout. Either because it's things that we can improve inside of Uno itself, or talking to the teams at Microsoft if there are things that need to be improved there for WebAssembly and other targets. So that's pretty much it. So we are actually making a draw. We're making a draw for prizes for the Uno Platform introduction to Uno Platform course on Udemy. So if it's of a value of $29.99 USD, and you can go to the tiny URL here for a chance to win the prize, and take a look at what Uno is able to do. So we have 3 courses available for that. I'll leave it there for a while. So I think the next one was about questions, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it was questions. So I'll leave the URL there, and let's open the floor for additional questions.
Wow, that was great. I mean, to be honest, it was a lot more than I was expected. I didn't know all these were possible, especially with WebAssembly. Sort of created the urge in me to start writing an app. I'm not a UI guy, but I did some things in the past with Xamarin, and yeah, maybe now it's
that's pretty close.
time to start again. Yeah. Very nice. What's the learning curve there? I mean, depending on your experience.
Yeah, so the learning curve is depending on obviously of the experience. We have the people asking the questions, when should I use Uno Platform? Our target audience at this point is people that are familiar with XAML and C# or C# specifically, that want to target a wide range of platforms, namely, so WebAssembly is our biggest draw of customers. It's the large appeal of being able to not having to go through stores is pretty amazing, and it's about WPF developers or UWP developers that want to go to additional platforms beside Windows, and that's the way it goes. So now we've seen people asking questions about there was a question about Razor Pages and mobile Blazor binding. That's definitely something that we can merge into in many cases. If you have any feedback about the use of additional platforms that you may want to target, and there's a very big discussion around the coded UI, pretty much closer to what Maui is doing or is going to be doing, or Flutter. That's the kind of discussions that people are asking about. If you have any feedback about that, let us know. It's something that we want to know about. So it really depends on your background, but the natural background for developing a Uno applications is that if you know either C# or XAML, you're in good shape for getting there for running with Uno.
Okay, cool. There's a question by Marcus. If there is a service somehow you provide that to bring Uno apps to iOS and Android stores.
Okay, so I'm not. So I'll try to understand. I'll try to answer the question. So the Uno itself does. So Uno. Maybe I could answer probably the question about how does Uno stay sustainable, and we actually have an article that we wrote recently about that, which is how basically are we profitable. And the idea is that we're using the platform.uno. We're using the Red Hat model, which is basically you can use the project in the way you want. You don't need to pay us or anything because it's completely free and open source. But if for some reason there's something that doesn't work in Uno, you can hire us and influence our backlog, basically. So that means that if there's a feature or a bug or something that prevents you from going out to publish your application on any store or publish on the web or anything like that, that we can do and help you there to fix Uno to make it run properly. Now, if it's about actually publishing an application to the store and having help there with wider let's say wider topics about deploying applications in general and not specific to Uno, this is something that our parent company is able to help as well. So inventive. So just drop us an email at info@platform.uno with a contact us here link there, and we'll definitely be able to help you somehow.
Cool. Then besides that, very nice. Is it a video? The thing that you are offering for everyone that is here? That last slide that you were showing, the introduction.
That one?
Yes. So there is this introduction for three of the people that are watching now. Is there any other getting started guide somewhere online so we can?
Yes, of course. So getting started is basically you go to if you go to Uno Platform here, you get the purple button at the top. So getting started, and you go directly to our to getting started samples. So that's the first thing. Now, if you're already familiar with how to create an application like that, we have also the Uno samples repository, which has quite a few samples with being able to run applications. So you have many things there, like benchmarking, camera capture. You could signal R sample, get SQLite, Skia Sharp, TabView, data grid sample. So you can browse all those samples and go into more details to see how that works. We also have the Channel 9 application. So if you go to platform.uno.ch9, that application is basically an application that we've developed to showcase how an application can work, and you can try it live using WebAssembly, but it's also available on the other stores. It's all open source. You can go browse the code on GitHub and experiment with it by yourself. So that's one of the ideas of that platform. So lots of content there, and of course, because Uno Platform is about implementing UWP, you can go and get the documentation for UWP, and it will be the same pretty much. So that's the whole base of documentation that comes from Microsoft. Where this is our base of implementation, so it's how you get the details of how that works.
Perfect. So just to sum up, using Uno is free. Supporting the developers, since you have Stack Overflow, you answer on Stack Overflow, right? So
yes, exactly.
Support is also kind of free.
Yes,
there is nothing to stop us from starting.
Exactly. So there's nothing. You can go to Stack Overflow, ask questions. The community is there. We're also on Discord. You can so you get the community. Contact us. I think we had that there somewhere. I have to probably developers. So that's all the things that we have, and you can contact us on Twitter. We're on Twitter. We're on Discord. I'm also twitching on every Tuesday. That's my Twitch stream, and actually did a few things with some live coding yesterday, so that was fun. So you're welcome to join me there and talk about Uno, and yeah, that's that. So that's and of course GitHub. You can open GitHub issues and discussions.
Perfect. So I know you more or less talked about it, but are there any paid services if someone needs extra help or something?
Yes, that's the paid services. So if you need additional support, you can contact us directly on at info.platform.uno or from the website here. Contact us, and you basically can influence us, influence the backlog that we are having on the Uno platform. You can take a look at if you take a look at the issues here, we have milestones that are happening up. So this is the things that we're working on at this point. So it's basically about influencing those milestones and get your issues fixed up more quickly than we would, depending on the alignment of features that we're targeting.
Perfect. I think it's very important to keep in mind that we can start today for free, no obligation. We can have all the support we want from Stack Overflow that we mostly use to get support from there anyway.
Exactly.
And yeah, if we have any professional needs, then let's see. There is a question by Quirin, is asking, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. He's asking how large is the community around the project? So you can find samples or what's going on there.
Large. We have lots of people that are contributing to the Uno platform itself. We have lots of people on Discord that are asking questions, and it's a vibrant community, to say the least. And keeping up with the number of issues, you can see here that lots of people have been opening issues. So we're trying to keep up, and we want to have more people interested into Uno, so contributing, and we're growing the team as well internally. So it's so we go faster, but still it's join us on Discord and you will see. That's pretty much what happens there.
Okay, nice. Any more questions, guys and girls? If not, I'm just going through to see if we missed any questions. Scrolling up. There is a question from Akim. Is there a way to migrate a large WPF application to Uno platform, e.g. by hosting controls? Of course, cross-platform only works once everything is transformed.
Yes, of course. So WPF is something that we have our eyes on. And actually, Microsoft is having its eyes on as well. The teams over there are they want to know about the scenarios that you're using in WPF that may not be available in WinUI. With regards to, and one of the things that the people have been asking for quite a bit is the markup extensions that are not available in UWP. So that's something that Microsoft is looking at. So in the process, it's basically take the code that you have that's running in WPF and try to make it run on UWP first, or WinUI 3, depending on the target that you want to get. And iterate over that. But that's for sure, it's not going to be, you cannot do it back and forth. It's really a port over to UWP and WinUI, and you continue from there. So there's no compatibility per se between both. The only compatibility that you can get is if you have .NET standard libraries, so .NET 2, 2.1, or .NET 5 libraries. Those libraries are compatible with all the targets from Uno. Actually, not .NET 5, depending on the current targets, but you can reuse that code. So if you have view models and things like that, if you're using the MVVM pattern, that will run across platforms. But the UI has to be specifically tailored for being UWP. That being said, the XAML is pretty close. So that means that if you've developed your XAML, it's going to be most of the time the same thing. And you may need to be doing some adjustments. But if you find scenarios that are not supported, just let us know. We're always interested in those scenarios so that we can enhance either Uno or talk to Microsoft so that it gets enabled further, so that you need less custom code to get that running.
Super. Now, since you are on the page of these scenarios, there is a question saying that currently our friend Quirin is developing an Android application which needs native Java libraries.
Okay.
Is it possible to add these native Java libraries to Uno?
Of course, it is. So the interesting thing here is that Uno doesn't do anything specific for supporting Android. What I mean by that is that Uno is using what Xamarin Android is providing. So we're talking the base binding that allows to use any Android API as C# API. But that also means that because Microsoft has been providing support for native libraries, you can basically import them and create bindings and make them run directly as part of your application. And actually, Uno already uses that for itself. We have a small portion of the Uno platform that is written in Java for performance or for compatibility in some cases, and we're using that as a way to interact with the platform. So yes, it's definitely possible.
Cool. Can you use UWP controls?
So the answer is yes, but it depends on the scenario. So when we say UWP controls, you cannot use a library that's been built only for UWP and use that on Uno. That being said, your code, you can retarget your library or your control that you've been building on top of UWP and compile that to Uno, and you won't have to change a thing, and your control is likely to be running properly on Uno as well.
Super. Anything else? Anyone? Because then I think we are okay. Yeah. Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation.
Thank you very much, all. Thanks for the questions. That was interesting.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Super. Yeah, I mean, at least for me, it opened up a new interesting hobby, because unfortunately or fortunately, my daily job doesn't have to do with UI a lot. But in any case, that's something that I always liked, and every now and then that I see something interesting, I jump in and I'm happy making an app or something, and then it's done. So
excellent.
That was very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Many thanks. Bye-bye.
Have a great evening.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Ciao.
Thanks, George.